I'd first like to start off and introduce myself. I'm Adrienne. I'm a 12-year Marine Corps spouse. I'm a current law student, and I'm the webinar committee chair. We're so pleased to have licensed marriage and family therapist Jordan Johnson with us today. Welcome, Jordan.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to having a good conversation.
Good. Jordan is a licensed marriage and family therapist and a clinical member of the American Association for Marriage and Family Therapy. He completed his bachelor's degree in psychology at Brigham Young University and received his master's in marriage and family therapy from Virginia Tech. We'll be addressing 4 broad topics today: communication to prevent drifting apart, managing stress during deployments, employment and reemployment stress, and then surviving infidelity. Jordan, let's dive right in.
Awesome. Well, first off, thanks so much for having me on here. I'm really looking forward to giving back to the community, and I just have read up on the work that you guys are doing, and I think it's phenomenal. I think it's an area that you guys are doing some really great work. So keep up the good work, and thanks for having me on. When we talk about communication, we talk about things that are productive and some things that are destructive. So the first, whenever I work with couples and work with families, my goal is to help them to cut out the destructive sides of their communication. Because that's the first thing we want to attack, so that we're making sure we're not doing more harm in our relationships. So first off, John Gottman was a big researcher, and he decided to research couples and find out what makes them successful, what makes a relationship work, and what makes a relationship fail. And in his research, some of the things that he found were that there's 4 key predictors to ending a relationship. So if you get into a relationship, these are the 4 things that you want to make sure that you're cutting out of your relationship. The first, and he calls these 4 things the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. The first that he talks about is criticism. Criticism is, it's damaging, right? It's naturally, we understand that, but sometimes we get into those negative loops in relationships when we care so much about our relationship and we want things to change. Sometimes we do it in an unproductive way. So criticism is attacking your partner's personality or character, usually with the intent of making someone right or somebody wrong. So the problem with criticism is it elicits the second one, which is defensiveness. And that's seeing yourself as the victim, warding off a perceived attack. So you can kind of see that dance of when people get critical and our partner gets defensive, and vice versa. The third is stonewalling. Stonewalling is withdrawing from the relationship as a way to avoid conflict. The problem with this is that it conveys disapproval, icy distance, and can put a major wedge in your relationship. So we want to make sure that we're trying to avoid the stonewalling part too. And the last, which is kind of the worst and the hardest, is contempt. Contempt, which is attacking your partner's sense of self with the intention to insult or psychologically abuse or harm him or her. So for me, I kind of think, if any of you have ever watched American Idol or any of those shows, everyone knows Simon Cowell, right? Who's that guy who just has that scowl and you know that he's going to say something contemptuous. And so if you're doing that in your relationship, where even sarcasm or things that go a little too far, you want to be aware of that and just monitor that. So those 4 areas, first off, to really try to cut out of your relationship, which is criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, and then contempt, okay? So then you say, well, what do I do instead? How am I supposed to interact with my spouse? What if there's something that I want to talk about that's difficult, right? So in that moment, we need to learn how to be productive, and we'll get to that in a minute. But other things to be aware of when you're interacting with your partner or just having communication is what I like to call the red zone. We all have an emotional thermometer, whether it be with anxiety, anger, sadness. Sometimes we can get overwhelmed, and when we become emotionally flooded, we start doing and we start saying things that we're going to regret. So one of the things that I try to teach couples is to monitor their own emotional status, knowing where you're at on your emotional thermometer. If you've had a really tough day at work, or the kids have been going crazy for a while, and your spouse isn't there to help you out, and the next time you go to have a phone call or a chat while they're on deployment, and you immediately blow up, right, without them even saying anything, or just off the bat you're already emotionally charged. So taking control over and understanding how important it is to monitor your emotional level going back to that red zone. So does that make sense? What are your thoughts on that, Adrian?
Makes good sense. And I think that another angle of that sometimes is actually when spouses are deployed and you don't want to discuss with them necessarily the issues because you're trying to keep them out of the drama of life.
Totally.
But maybe you have a friend or you have a sibling or somebody that you confide with, and you have that interaction with them as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. And so how do we avoid that? How do we avoid getting, too overcharged emotionally, in a sense of kind of hitting that emotional threshold? And one of the ways that I think is really helpful to do that is, as simple and as kind of cliche as it sounds, is to have a protocol which I like to call negotiated timeout, which means that any time in your relationship, whether you're with your partner or they're deployed or wherever it is, to just have an agreement that if either of you calls a timeout, at that moment you guys are just going to stop what you're doing. You're going to take a break. They say that it takes 20 minutes for anger to leave the body. So take 20-minute break, separate to different locations, go calm down. This isn't a time to go build up your case and to say why you're right? I know that we have a lot of lawyers here and people who are very bright and intelligent, but at the same time, we want to make sure our goal is that we're going into a conversation with a very level head. So take that time to calm down. And then when you come back, you don't necessarily have to resolve the issue. You don't have to get to a solution, but you have to do one of three things, which helps with avoiding kind of having that wedge get in the relationship after that space time. Which A is that we come back and we have a conversation and we say, A, we're ready to talk about it. I'm calm, I'm in a good spot, ready to go. B, can we, have 20 more minutes? Could we talk about it tonight when the kids are in bed? Could we talk about it this weekend? But we always have a point at which we know we're going to address the issue. And then C is we need some help. We need to table it for a professional, or we need to schedule an appointment, because this is an issue that we keep running on, whether it's finances or intimacy or, number of issues that can come up with couples. So having kind of that triage that really keeps everybody safe, and that it's not going to be something that you just have lingering and you never really get to. So does that make sense, kind of how a negotiated timeout can kind of be helpful for calming those nerves and de-escalating the emotional threshold?
Yeah, it's perfect. And I think also it may be helpful, speaking from experience, to write things down as you're having the struggle, so that when you do bring it to therapy, then you can navigate it in therapy and you haven't necessarily forgotten about it, but it's off your mind. So
absolutely a great place where you can process and kind of get your thoughts out on paper, because sometimes we just let them roll and we have them stewing in our mind and we don't actually make them productive. Great points. Thanks, Andrea. Okay, and then the last part is looking at your relationship kind of like an emotional bank account, right? Where am I making withdrawals or deposits into my bank account? And the researchers tell us that we need 5 positive things for every 1 negative thing that happens in a relationship. So if you get into a fight or you get into an argument, that's understandable. That happens. There's differences for reasons, but at the same time, we got to make sure, are we making more deposits after that? Are we saying kind words? Are we giving a compliment? Are we opening the door? Are we serving in some way? I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the 5 love languages and those areas that are kind of helping to build up your relationship. So with that, so now we have a difficult issue. We have a topic that we aren't able to resolve. We aren't able to handle. It's just we've kind of gotten into a negative loop or a negative cycle all the time. So how do we handle that? And at the bottom, it's actually best if you have a professional to kind of guide you through this. But if not, that's okay too. You can kind of go down to the reflective listening part of it. And there's kind of just a formula for that, like a back and forth, where you have on the left you have the speaker, and on the right you have the listener. And it's really a prompt of just how do we have difficult conversations. And it starts out by having the speakers talk about the emotions that they feel. So there's a difference between the emotions we feel and the content that we're trying to say, right? So for example, if our spouse comes home, late at night and they're 2 hours late from work or whatever event that they had, automatically, if I'm the person at home, I'm going to be upset. I'm going to be bothered by that. But when they walk through the door, I may say, oh, well, you're an idiot and I hate you, And you translate that, it's to, I was really scared. was sad that something happened to you. I was just really worried. And so when you can get down to the emotion of it, that I'm actually worried, and it's not just I hate you, you can have more productive conversations. And then kind of following that prompt, I won't go too much into that, but that's where it's really helpful to kind of have the reflective listening, where one partner is able to state their emotions and kind of say where they're coming from, and the second side, the other partner can reflect back what they heard. And that way you really ensure that message sent is message received. So those are kind of some of the communication tips and the things that we want to avoid in relationships, as well as things that we want to augment. And so yeah, it's a really just good start for that. Take a look at that handout. Feel free to download it and use it, and hopefully it's helpful.
Thanks. I like the part at the end about switching roles as well, because sometimes we can tend to focus on our thoughts and issues, and maybe we need to give a little space to our spouse regarding what it is that they're feeling and thinking. So, okay. So, do you have, I guess we discussed the tips for communicating when we feel that things are drifting apart a little bit. One of the questions that came in prior to the start of this webinar was a question that says, I'm constantly on the go. Are there any stress relieving techniques that I can use while in a public or semi-public setting? And we just discussed marriage relationships, and I'm wondering if we could maybe bring up that Hold Me Tight book, if you'd like to discuss that for a minute.
That'd be great. That'd be great. So the therapy that I practice is called emotionally focused therapy. And the author and the creator of that therapeutic model, she wrote a book. She wrote it for clients, kind of telling, a really kind of a step-by-step walkthrough guide when you're going through therapy, but also just kind of a guide if you're not able to get to a therapist. And so this is kind of a really good tool, and I think you're bringing it up there. I'm not sure. Can everybody see that? It looks like. So the book's called Hold Me Tight, and the author is Sue Johnson. So it's a really great book for just kind of enhancing your relationship and really helping deepen your connection. She talks about 7 conversations for a lifetime of love. So this is really a marital enhancement book when you're going through struggles. And we'll talk about some of the other books and resources when we get to infidelity, kind of when it's really on the rocks. But yep, that's a great resource there.
Okay, great. So obviously we'd be able to pull that up on our Kindle or on our smartphone if we're using an app for reading.
Totally.
When we're on the go. Okay. Okay. Do you want to talk about Stop, Think, and Breathe at all?
Yeah.
Maybe since we just touched on that as well.
That was a great question, and whoever submitted that question, thanks for submitting it. And if you have other questions out there and you're in the audience, don't hesitate to ask. I'd love to kind of go with the flow here. So the question was talking about what are some tools and some resources that that we can use in our daily life. And so as a therapist, there's a couple of them that I'll give to clients that are really great. You can use them with your phone. And so I think she has pulled up here. There's one that I really like a lot. It's called Stop, Think, and Breathe, or Stop, Breathe, and Think. And it's a meditation app, which kind of just walks you through. If you pop in your headphones and you're on the metro, or you're driving in your car, or wherever you are, you can just put that in, and it kind of helps you slow down and start breathing. Because we know that when we get breaths and we get more oxygen into our system, we can think better. We are able to get into our prefrontal lobes instead of being back in our amygdala. Our amygdala is where the fight, flight, and kind of the animal brain is. And so what we want to do is we really want to calm ourselves down through working with our body. So the thought is that if we can calm our body and get to a more relaxed spot, that helps calm our mind. So this is a really good app that I like for that. A second one is, it's called SAM, and I think she pulled it up right there too. It's really helpful when working with anxiety. There's some really great tools on there. There's even just, I'm in a panic mode, right, and I need something to do. So there's a spot where it goes, help for anxiety right now. And one of the images that it has is it gives you a tactile option where it shows a picture, and it's kind of like fog on a shower door where you can kind of wipe the fog away. And there's other ones where it kind of walks you through other breathing exercises as well. Or there's a journal on there where you can type out your feelings. And so both these apps are free, and they're on Android and iOS for Apple. So
awesome. I'm going to throw out there too that one of the apps that I use is breathe to relax.
Yeah.
And so that's something that has, you can adjust the timing as you go out breathing. So if you need deeper breaths or longer breaths, and it helps you build up the breathing, but it also times it and it speaks to you as you're doing it. So it kind of guides you through that meditation, if you will.
And what about if we're deployed and we don't have technology, right? What do we do then? And so I want to teach you one more skill and tool that I found helpful. It's called square breathing. And how that works is you kind of imagine a square, if we were to look at this piece of paper, right? And on that, if we were to say that this bottom half is 4 counts, and this is 4 counts up here, 4 counts, right? On this bottom half, we're going to start here in the corner and say, breathe in for 4 counts, and then you hold it for 4 counts, you breathe out for 4 counts, and then you hold it again for 4 counts. And you do that 4 times, and you can do that in your mind. I mean, you could just think of a square in a sense, but you could be anywhere again like that. You don't need to tell anybody that you're breathing. But that just really helps us to slow down. It's another just easy activity.
I love it. Great. Thanks. So you touched on what to do for service members who are deployed or people who are on the go. What is something that you would recommend someone do if they sense that their marriage relationship is changing with their spouse? How do they go about bringing it up?
Yeah, that's really tough, especially with distance and traveling and deployments and other things like that. There's a big key phrase that I like to say to clients all the time is that we have to lean into the emotion. Whatever we're feeling or whatever we're experiencing, whether it be anger, sadness, anxiety about our relationship, struggles with our kids, you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. Because on the other side of uncomfortable is growth. The other side is progress. So taking some time to be able to, what I like to do is I like to have a journal, and it's just a Word document where I can process my thoughts. It's password protected, and so nobody else has to see it, but just to free write and say, what am I feeling right now? What are the emotions that are going on for me? And then how do I take that and be productive in a conversation with my spouse or with a partner or whoever? So I'd say being able to process that and then kind of come back and how to have that conversation. Gottman and Sue Johnson talk a lot about soft startups, which means it's kind of that sandwich method, right? Where you have one positive thing and then you couch it with a difficult conversation that you need to have. And then on the other side, another reason why I love you and another reason why I'm happy to be in this relationship. It's another good tip when you want to approach a difficult conversation.
Awesome, great. I think too the journaling part is helpful because it helps you to, when you reflect on your journal, realize where you've grown and see where you've progressed so that you're not always focused on the past. You're able to move forward and again, just celebrate what you've done successfully.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So moving into a more sensitive topic for some, unfortunately, not everyone is faithful to their spouse during marriage. Surprisingly, some may find this to be surprising, military couples are actually less likely than the civilian population or their counterparts are to divorce. And so I wanted to touch on divorce and bring up some of those issues, but I think a big question that everyone thinks about is it possible for a marriage to recover after infidelity? And if so, how do you go about doing that?
Yeah, wow. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there with how resilient our military population is. That was such an honor for me when I was with the Chaplain's Family Life Center there on Fort Belvoir, and to witness that firsthand, to see people go on deployments and have not only familial stress at home where one spouse is at home and the other's deployed, but the struggles of being out on a 6-month tour or a year tour or 2 years, and their ability to work through that is just, I think it speaks so highly of our military population. So I am grateful for that, and I just commend all of you who are part of that and want to express that off the bat. And so the second part, which goes back to your question of sometimes divorce happens and sometimes relationships have irreparable things. But I really would encourage you as best as you can. It's like any problem, right? If you have an injury, the sooner that you get to it with the trusted professional, the better off you're going to be, the better chance you give for your relationship to kind of recover and survive. I know that the military is they're very proactive when it comes to counseling, whether it be a chaplain's office or there are tons of military organizations out there that are I believe are free to service members and spouses as well, if not part of the insurance network that the military offers, which is phenomenal. So I would say you don't have much to lose by going to counseling. I think it can only help. I understand that there's a fear that our relationship might end or it might suffer consequences, but I think that what it does is it helps uncover real issues that you guys need to talk about. So first off, go to a professional, I think is really key. What were you going to say, Adrian?
Well, I was going to pull up the After the Affair book that you suggested as well. Mm-hmm. That if somebody's looking for a resource specifically regarding those issues, that might be helpful. Absolutely.
So, yeah, Janice, she's phenomenal. She wrote a great book called After the Affair, Janice Abrams, and she really hits on so many of the details from both perspectives of what it's like to be the person who's had an affair as well as somebody who's experienced the injury of an affair from their partner, and really kind of goes through and details just some common things that people experience, as well as some tools for helping recover from it. She also recognizes that not all relationships should recover. Sometimes there are affairs and things that are happening that just signals that it's not a healthy relationship. But I think that's kind of where the power of having a therapist can help you kind of tailor for your situation. But this is a great resource, especially if you're away from therapy or you don't have the opportunity to see a therapist. This book is a really good one that I often refer to clients. So
awesome, thank you.
You bet.
I was going to bring up that the next issue that a lot of our population faces is employment and reemployment stress.
Yeah.
And I have certainly faced this myself. My basic resume, as other people can probably attest to as well, is that it's at least 3 pages long due to all of the number of federal jobs that I've held over the last decade as we've PCS'd to duty station to duty station. Right. Wrestling with frequent moves, deployments, erratic schedules because of service member mates. Military spouses have an unemployment rate that's upwards of 18%. It's more than 3 times the national average. There was a 2016 study commissioned by Blue Star Families. It's a group that coordinates services for families with a loved one who's currently serving or who has served in the military. Mm-hmm. It found that up to 42% of military spouses, or as many as 95,000, are jobless, compared to about 25% of the compatible civilian spouse population. And in addition, it's estimated that military spouses with a bachelor's degree or higher earn 40% less than their civilian counterparts due to these frequent moves. So what advice can you give to us to battle the ups and downs of employment and reemployment? But maybe it may be helpful to just talk about some of those issues, at least from the perspective that I've had, and if anybody from the audience wants to jump in, please feel free.
Yeah.
Part of it is feeling stress and anxiety over preparing for interviews. Part of it is once you have the job, figuring out how to navigate, knowing that you're eventually going to be leaving. And so you struggle, I think, sometimes to build relationships with people on a deeper level. Mm-hmm. And I think, the constant thought of leaving is on your mind. So with that in mind, what say ye?
Well, I know everything, right? So, I mean, I've been through it. No, I'm just but no, I think you really bring up a great point. I mean, think about, like, one of the first things that us as therapists will do is we'll assess somebody's resources that they have available to them, whether that be, socially or spiritually or, employment-wise, what they have. But imagine having to change that every 3 years, or 2 years or 6 months or whatever that be. Having to go through, I can't even imagine how hard that would be for support systems on their own. But just then think about the children, right? Think about, I mean, you guys are just going through so much in doing that. So some suggestions that I have with that changing and with kind of the the ever fluid process of that. And sometimes you don't even know, right? I mean, you don't get orders until, pretty soon.
Sure.
That people, I think the best thing that I could encourage is to develop a routine, have structure over the things that you can control. And what I mean by that is making sure that those areas that you can control, such as exercise or having your social network of people that you're around as best as you can, invest in where you are today. And I know that the thought of the future is always looming and always there and struggling to think about how do I handle that in the future, but live in the moment. You never know if that person that you talk to is going to be a great resource, or if you have does that make sense where I'm going with that really focus on being where you are. Unpack your bags, put them in your dresser, don't live out a suitcase, do all those things where you can invest in where you are today, and that will enable you to have a little bit more structure, as well as your routine, like I was talking about, having an exercise plan, and having still having weekly date nights, still having like a family night or something that really helps ground and anchor you as a unit, whether if you're in a family, but if you're single or if you're on your own, having those routines of things that you're doing, and those whether you like to go and join a specific group that likes to go sightseeing, or whatever it may be, have something that's yours that you can rely on and kind of depend on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I really like that idea about having traditions outside of work that help you flow with your life, that help your life flow, I guess, that help you to continue to have relationships with people outside of work and outside of employment. That's really important. Is there anything, as far as, I know we've discussed the breathing techniques for job interview preparation and things like that. Is there anything else that you would suggest before having a job interview that somebody could do? I'll throw something out actually that I heard from a girlfriend who is an attorney. She is a prosecutor, and she will usually stand up and do the Superwoman pose before she goes up to perform. And apparently it's supposed to increase your endorphins or something. I don't know the science behind it. Maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, totally. I remember I had a professor, I went to Virginia Tech, and I had a professor there, and there was one time when she loves the mindfulness movement, and she loved kind of the yoga. I think she was a yoga instructor as well. But I remember one time she asked all of us in the class to stand up, and she's like, next time you go into a job interview, what I want you to do is I want you to go into the bathroom, and I want you to start doing put your arms out and start doing toe touches from each side and get the blood moving in your body. And then, and it was just so funny. We were like, what are you talking about? And then we get up and we do it, and you start moving around. And it's really all about that blood flow. It's about being able to get some oxygen into your body. Again, coming back to the prefrontal lobes, to where you're not in different parts of your brain, so that you can calm down. And so whether it's, square breathing or, yoga poses or movements that help you kind of do that, I think having the opportunity to really just get some blood moving is really helpful with that. So I loved what your suggestion was. I think that's right on point.
Great.
Totally.
Great. Wonderful. I think that there was one more resource regarding communication with your spouse in general, the Hold Me Tight book. Mm-hmm. Did we discuss that?
I think we touched on it a little bit in the communication.
Okay. Okay. Is there anything else that you want to touch on in that area?
Yeah, I think we've covered quite a bit. I mean, hopefully this is enough for people to digest. I know I've given a very quick and brief overview of some of the resources, but hopefully somebody out there kind of benefits from that. Don't hesitate to ask questions or shoot me an email, or reach out in any way. I'd be happy to talk a little bit further about that. Just looking over my notes to see if there was anything else that.
Perfect. Well, I was going to say, if anybody if one of our participants or listeners has any questions, general questions or specific questions, please feel free to type them in at this point. We'll wait about a minute, and then we will move towards wrapping up. Looks like I don't see anything coming in.
If I can give just a couple more tips, there are a couple more things that I
Yeah,
want to
sure.
with, especially when it comes to, and if there are questions that come in, don't hesitate to jump in.
Okay, I will.
But if there are people out there who your relationship is struggling, or if you're having a difficult time communicating, or just feeling like you're growing apart, or having just connection problems, there are really three key things that I'd really encourage you to do going away from this webinar. And the first is to give your partner the benefit of the doubt. You guys are on the same team. You're really trying to do the best that you can. Neither of you is an opponent. You're on the same team. So when you go into conversations and you go into communication or whatever it may be, remember that they're on your team. The second is to have structure plans for your relationship. Now, what I mean by that is to have, like I mentioned a little bit before, to have three things in your week. And the first is to have a family night, any time in the week where the whole family is connecting and bonding, that everyone can look to and saying, hey, we have this night of the week that we're going to go mini golfing together. We're going to go for a hike, or we're going to go do something that connects with everyone together. The second is to have a date night. And I know that may seem like a lot, and it doesn't have to be a financial burden. It doesn't have to be something extravagant. It could be going for a walk with your partner. It could be 15 minutes. It could be an hour. It could be going to dinner. It could be whatever, but have at least one a week. And the second part to that is that each of you switch planning. So if it's one partner at the start of the week, of 1 week, the next week the other partner plans it, and kind of goes from that point of view. And then the last part to that is having a couple's inventory. And what I mean by that is that at the end of each week, I think an area time that's really helpful is like a Sunday night, as you're going to bed, or if you're just having pillow talk, or whatever it may be, have a time where you have 15 minutes, half hour to just catch up on the week of things that, hey honey, XYZ happened during the week, and we haven't had a chance to talk about that. Can we talk about that? And it could be positive things. It could be, difficult things or difficult conversations that you have. But what that enables you to do is to not have that wedge grow in your relationship, where you have the distance that grows, and that things get worse over time, and people make assumptions, and it really is kind of a catch-all for helping you to come back and to reinvest in your relationship. So those are kind of the big points and big challenges that I would encourage you to have if you really want to invest in your relationship and to make it better. And the third is go to therapy. You've got nothing to lose, especially when you're in the military. I think that the resources are there, and it's just a really great option for helping build better relationships. And so that would be kind of my encouragements there. So.
Perfect. Okay, Jordan, where can our members and participants contact you if they have any questions?
Yeah, you can go to my website, jordanjohnsoncounseling.com. You can reach me through there. You can email me directly at jordanjohnson.lmft@gmail.com. You can shoot me an email there, or feel free to give me a call. I don't mind talking, even if you're in another state. I love this stuff, and so don't hesitate to reach out. It's an honor for me. It's been a privilege.
Perfect. Well, we can't thank you enough for your time and for your wonderful discussion on topics that are so relevant to many of our members. We may not all be facing each of these issues at this time or even in the future, but it is helpful to discuss them and know that they exist. Yeah. I hope that people know that they're not alone if they are struggling with certain issues, and that there is help. They just need to reach out. I mean, I think at the end of the day, that's the biggest thing, is that you are in control of your own destiny when it comes to receiving help and therapy for troubles, and for helping to improve communication in the relationships that you have, because you can control what you say, and you can control what you do and how you react. So that's important.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said.
But thanks. Okay, well, a copy of the recording will be posted on the MSJDN website for those who were unable to join us, or if anybody missed or may have missed part of the webinar. We hope everyone has a great week, And unless anybody has anything else, I don't see anything that's come up in chat, we'll
They
log
met
off.
everybody. Good. We're
Thanks,
all
Leonard.
problems are solved.
Thanks. All right, great. Everybody have a great week. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks so much, guys. See you later.